to the Fantasy Alarm MLB DFS podcast with hosts John Impemba and James Grande.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Better Baseball MLB DFS playbook here on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm social channels. I am James Grande. No, that is not John Impemba. It is a man who is much brighter today than John ever is. John is always wearing black. He is always wearing darker shirt. I shouldn't say that. Generally, we're not as bright as our co-host today, Justin Fensterman. You can follow him on the old Twitter machine at Fensty Sports. Fensty, what's going on, brother? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, James Grande. 3 games, 1 full hour of coverage coming at you, man. I'm ready, dude. I'm ready. 3 games. We're going to win something tonight.
So Fensty is bearing the lead there. We are not going 1 hour today. We will be able to talk. We will just talk until we can't talk anymore, which Fensty and I can do a lot. So we could fill the hour, but for 30 minutes, it would be about like what's our Chipotle order, right? Which we could do a full hour on alone, I'm sure. But a lot to get into, despite it being a 3-game slate. We have some weather that we have to take a look at. We have some over-unders that I think are a little interesting. So, Fensty, anything stand out from you in the Vegas aspect and the weather standpoint? Like, what are we looking at here on both those fronts?
The main weather concern is tonight in New York at Citi Field, and I've been following the radar for the last few hours where, when I've been on these streams with you, I told you about the key to humidity. The closer to 100% you get, the more likely it's going to rain. However, even though the humidity might rise to about 52 to 55% in the 6 p.m. Eastern hour, that's still a pretty big rise right there, and it could lead to something short term when it comes to the rain. So even though it's still, you're seeing the predictions here, that it's still partly cloudy, more clouds are going to be in the sky, and that could be a short rainstorm. So that means that the game might be backed up for just a little bit, because then I'm seeing that at about 7 p.m., that humidity immediately drops back to 10 to 12%, which is a good sign.
That was amazing. Why haven't we hired you as a weatherman at this point?
Hey, man, earth science, man. It was my best.
Here we go with the earth science. Here we go with the earth science thing. I should have never brought it up. I forgot. Hey, that's great. It looks like it has gotten a little more likely that there's probably going to be a delay in the Mets game, whether that's delayed start or a delay some point during the game. I honestly, as a DFS player, we want delayed start. We don't want start and stop because, for those using pitchers in this game, Kodai Senga or Josiah Gray, obviously a concern. I guess there's also a little issue in St. Louis where there could be rain. It's also 100 degrees tonight in St. Louis. 100 degrees, which is obviously, naturally the ball is going to fly when it's that hot. So definitely some interesting things on the weather front. Anything stand out to you about 3 games? I see what total at 9, 9.5, 8.5. Anything that stands out to you in any of those games?
I think what you just said here, especially in that Cubs-Cardinals game, with the total being what it is, it makes me wonder if we're going to have some runs scored tonight, especially, by the way, from the Cardinals side, because something we're going to have to talk about is Justin Steele being the lonely lefty on the mound tonight. But he's had some good recent success, James, and we've talked about not getting caught up in the trap of going back to a start in April, but a couple of recent starts over the last month, though, a little bit more of an indicator that we can rely on.
I agree. And I like Justin Steele tonight. If you head over to fantasyalarm.com and head over to the MLB DFS section, you will see my playbook out there for everyone this evening. And Fancy, that brings us to this part of the show that we've introduced of late, and it is the RT Sports segment we have here, and it's the real-time sports pick'em. And what you guys have to do is, if you're not a member, there's a QR code right down there. You can scan it, and 100% deposit match up to $200 over on rtsports.com/alarm. So all you do, Fence, you write this down, please. rtsports.com/alarm. You use code ALARM23, one word, and first-time depositors get a 100% instant match up to $200. They have baseball, basketball when that returns. They have football, only a few Sundays away, Fancy, from football returning. They have golf, big tournament kicked off this morning, and more. Whatever sports in action, RT Sports has it. What you have to do is you set a lineup of player props, hit them over, and you win. That is, once again, rtsports.com/alarm. Alarm 23 is your deposit code, as I have a massive brain fart in the middle.
I was like, are you quizzing me or something like that? Mr.
First-time depositors.
Mr. Grande, am I back in school?
First-time depositors get a 100% instant match up to $200. And per usual, we will, in fact, each come ahead with a play of our own here, Fensty. So as my co-host, what do you got first for us here over on RT Sports?
I'm going to go to Nico Horner, over 1.5 total bases. Let's call it as it is. This guy's been a hitting machine over the last few games. And I'm going to talk about something that you really don't like when I bring up, but a little BVP, by the way. 9 hits against Miles Michaelis in 22 plate appearances, Grande. So I was having trouble figuring out what exactly I liked. And that one immediately popped out on RT Sports. And I love that one.
I can't say I dislike it, because Nico Horner is one of my favorite DFS plays in the night too, and he's been amazing sans the BVP discussion. I pretty much ignored it. I blocked it out of my mind. It didn't even exist, honestly. I don't even know what you're talking about. I do like Nico Horner quite a bit. I think the Cubs are one of the best plays of the night overall. I'm going to go to that Washington, New York humid game with lots of wind blowing out in Citi Field. And I love Brandon Nimmo against Josiah Gray tonight. I'm going to take the over 5.5 fantasy points. If you guys watch the Better Sports Betting Show over on at 4 p.m., right before you and I hopped on here, and you actually were a guest today, I took Brandon Nimmo as my home run call at plus 400 today. Josiah Gray has been struggling with lefty power of late. 5.5 fantasy points is nothing. And now, we said this last week about Corbin Carroll, and Corbin Carroll was 5.5. We're like, what the hell is Corbin Carroll doing at 5.5? But this feels different with Josiah Gray's struggles lately. The home run ball is starting again with Josiah Gray. We know he's had a propensity to do that a lot in the past. 40 home runs allowed last year. So Brandon Nimmo over 5.5 fantasy points for me. 1.5 total bases for Fensty for Nico Horner. And again, the QR code's right below. Right this way. Nope, this way. Scan that QR code, and new users get up to a 100% deposit match up to $200 when they visit the QR code or rtsports.com/alarm. Alarm 23 is your code. With that aside, Mr. Fensterman, we are going to head into our DraftKings slate. And again, we have 3 games on the docket, so nothing too crazy here. Let's hop into pitcher, okay? As I pull up this here DraftKings slate, and I remove our QR code. There it is, and there's your name too. Look at that, Justin Fensterman at Fensty Sports. Again, if you guys are just seeing Fensty for the first time, which would be crazy. Fensty, before we get into pitcher, actually, I got to address this comment from Mark, our longtime listener, first time caller, Mark Pitts. What's worse, a 3-game slate or a claw hammer to the skull? Truthfully, I'll just get this out of the way. I don't know what a claw hammer is. So if you want to take this away, Fensty, you be my guest.
Yeah, I mean, I view it as like a bunch of white claws that are made into a hammer, somehow glued together into a hammer. So I'm wondering if it would truly hurt that much, but I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get thumped in the skull. So please give me the 3-game slate to be better. So the claw hammer mark is worse. It's a no contest.
I mean, you go right to alcohol, like, why? I mean, who knows what maybe we'll get something from Mark on what a claw hammer
Ain't
actually
no
entails.
laws when you got claws, Grande.
Let's go on to pitcher. Talk to me about the pitching slate, because we'll just look at it broadly. Kodai Senga is your top price pitcher. Justin Steele is right behind him at 8,600. Dylan Cease at 8K. Tanner Bybee 72. Miles Mikolas 68. And Josiah Gray rounds out the pitching position. What's your temperature on all these guys, Fancy? Like, who are you really into? Who do you want to target? Break down pitcher for me here.
Michaelis, I want to completely stay away from, and I'm going to target a lot of Cubs bats against them tonight. In the segment soon enough where we go over fielders, then yes, absolutely hitters. But with Josiah Gray, I thought about this for a second. With the Mets overall, I mean, you look to see what they've done over the last few weeks, not that impressive. And Gray is very, very cheap. He's also better on the road as well. My two favorites from this slate are Steele, as we talked about before, beat up the Cardinals recently over the last month in his last two starts against them again over the last month, not going back to April. Gray, you got to go back a little bit further to see that he has had success versus the mess of the Mets. But I like Steele and Bybee ultimately when it comes to these pitchers. But for some reason, I just can't stop looking at Josiah Gray. Can you smack me across the face and just talk me out of him against the Mets?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he's been better than he's getting credit for. He's obviously a big underdog against Kodai Senga on the road tonight. The Mets are the biggest favorites on the board. But 3.45 ERA and only 15 home runs in 20 when, again, he led Major League Baseball in home runs allowed last year. He's obviously cut that down. He's changed his pitch repertoire to help that. Less four-seam fastballs, more cutters. So it's been a direct effect. I definitely don't like 15-mile-an-hour winds blowing out for a guy who has a long history of home runs allowed. The Mets have been better. We saw the rebirth of Pete Alonso in Yankee Stadium over the weekend or earlier this week. We've seen Brandon Nimmo really good atop the Mets order. I understand it from the perspective that he's 5% rostered, and we have 4 pitchers today over 20% projected. We have 3 pitchers 40% or higher.
Right.
So nobody's
a product of the slate, by the way.
It's a product of the slate for sure, which always intrigues me. If you're playing multiple lineups, why not take a shot on the guy that's 4% rostered, right? Like, you have massive leverage over the field if he's good. I just don't know if this is the spot to do it because I think the Mets bats are waking up. I think this is a really bad weather environment. And that's kind of brings me to Steele too, who I really like. And I wrote up in today's MLB DFS playbook at fantasyalarm.com. But now 100-degree weather is so scary. Here's 2 things we need to know about St. Louis. 1, they have the 3rd highest strikeout rate against lefties in July. That's direct product. They just struck out 9 times in July against Justin Steele the last time they faced him. They also have an 800 OPS, and that's top 5 in baseball against lefties. So, like, we could see a scenario where Steele has, like, all these strikeouts, and he gives up 3 home runs in hot weather, and it's, like, his line is, like, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, 5 earned, right? Or he doesn't even make it through 6 because the Cardinals are getting to him. As I've noted the weather more today, I've been a little scared off. What do you make of, I mean, you mentioned Tanner Bybee. That would be the other spot you'd go to because the field is in complete agreement. And I'm in complete agreement. I think Tanner Bybee's a rock star play at 7,200.
Yeah, no, and I like him too, mainly because look at who he's facing with the White Sox at this point. Team that I just can't get behind lately. And again, we only have so many pitchers to choose from. And while we were just talking about Gray getting cute, you made the assessment, which is true, that despite over the last 2 weeks with the Mets hitting 205, last few games, you've seen them hit a little bit. So rather than getting too cute there and spending up a little bit more, let's attack the White Sox and see what they can do. Obviously, with the White Sox, with all they're doing, they're selling at this point. With Bybee going up tonight, he's had a few good starts in his last 5, especially even coming off that start against Philadelphia. And at 7,200, man, it just seems like he's more of a safety valve, especially if you're that concerned with the 100-degree heat going on between the Cubs and the Cardinals.
Yeah, and for Tanner Bybee, the White Sox in the month of July, dead last in basically every offensive category. Dead last in WOBA, dead last in OPS, and they have a 25% strikeout rate to boot. So we could see another Bybee ceiling game. We've seen 30-plus fantasy points twice on DraftKings in his last 4 starts. Against some, I mean, the White Sox are not Philly. They're not Texas. They're not the Cubs. They're not the Brewers. And he's really hasn't had many problems with any of them. The walks are sometimes an issue, right?
Right.
So that's noteworthy, but the White Sox aren't exactly a team they're a very free swinging bunch. So I love Tanner Bybee. Any love for Dylan Cease, 8K? He's definitely in probably the best stretch of his season outside of the St. Louis start. But he's looked pretty good in back-to-back starts. Atlanta and Minnesota too.
Right. No, that definitely brings it up. And also something that you're looking at is you're seeing the strikeouts a little bit more consistent once you get to that 6 area. And he's struck out at least 6 batters in like 5. You're looking at 8 of his last 9 starts.
Yep.
You know the strikeouts are there. And as James Grande says a lot on these streams, on DraftKings, strikeouts are king. So with us not having a few, too many options here, you can look at that. The walks, though, at least 2 and 3 of the last 4, that's something that, comes to mind a little bit. And also, I mean, I would love to see if this guy can go closer to 7. It's been a lot of 5s and 6s lately when it comes to his appearances, but the strikeouts are definitely an area that we can trust here.
I mean, we know, you just brought up why he's only going 5 and 6, the walks. He's throwing too many. It naturally, when people strike a lot of guys out, their pitch count's elevated. If they're also walking people, they're just going to always meet right at the pinnacle. 5 innings, it's like, wow, 5 innings, 100 pitches. How'd that happen? Well, 3 walks and 9 strikeouts did you in there, bud. So, I like Dylan Cease. The one thing I'll say, the Guardians don't strike out a whole lot. Maybe that changes with some pieces being traded. They traded Amed Rosario to the Dodgers, right? And obviously that lineup is a little weaker. Gabriel Arias is their starting shortstop tonight. So remains to be seen what the Guardians look like without Amed Rosario. But I like Dylan Cease. And we didn't really talk about Kodai Senga that much, Fancy, before we move on. Like, what's your thoughts? He has, and you mentioned the Josiah Gray thing on the road. It's been reversed. Kodai Senga has been nails in Citi Field this year. So what is your temperature on Senga?
Yeah, look, the biggest thing with him that stood out for most of the season has been his walk rate.
Yes.
That's been something that's been very concerning. But you look in the last few starts, and he's allowed more than one time in his last 3 starts, which is a little bit more encouraging for a guy like him at this point, where he's had games of 4 walks, 5 walks. Then to see it go down like that is something that's very encouraging there. My biggest thing with Kodai Senga will be, this last start is less. It's the inconsistency that we're seeing him. I don't know how many innings to expect from this guy. That's one of my major things with Kodai Senga. But again, the strikeouts for the most part continue to be there as well. So you can't full fade him at this point. But that's the thing. How deep is he going to go in this matchup? That's a little bit concerning to me as well.
Highest projected rostered pitcher tonight, Kodai Senga. So that will be interesting to see how it plays out. In tournaments, I absolutely do not mind fading him, given it's a 3-game slate. So let's move on to catcher, Fensty. Again, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 names available to us here on this 3-game slate. Of the seven, how many would you actually roster?
I was having trouble coming up with this before when I was filling out our little trusty show doc here. So at this point, and by the way, no Alvarez tonight for the Mets. So He's out of that pool. Really what it comes down to me is Contreras or Yan Gomes from either matchup, right? Might as well take advantage of the weather situation from the hitting side. So those are the 2 that really stand out to me at this point. What about you as someone like, and I got to make sure everything's straight with him, but someone like a Bo Naylor, if you're going cheaper, does he stand out a little bit more and it's worth just going all the way down to 2.6 for him? Or you're spending up a little bit more for one of those 2 because of the higher priced options? Gomes and Contreras are the standouts to me.
Yeah, so Contreras has definitely turned it around. And he's back from he had the little back injury. Was it a back? A hip injury. Had yesterday off, but back in the lineup, hitting lefties well. I like that. Gomes has definitely been better against lefties this year. But he's been really good of late. 300 average, 900 OPS his last 10, 4 hits in 4 straight games. I like Bo Naylor quite a bit. I think this is a quality spend down spot because the position is so bad. Like, we have literally 7 catchers to choose from. And I just feel like opportunity cost spending up elsewhere will present itself. So spending down on Bo Naylor 2,600, I think is a great play. We just saw the upside double donged 2 days ago.
Right.
And then here's one, Fensty, I'll give you. Omar Narvaez is the starting catcher for the Mets tonight. And he has obviously had a lackluster season. He wasn't with the Mets to begin the year and has stepped in and is now the backup catcher. He's kind of always been a good offensive player, like specifically offense. Like he is not good defensively. I know that. But he can hit 803 OPS in this limited sample lately. And the reason I bring this up is because when you look at Josiah Gray lately, he struggled a lot with lefty power. And that is why I also brought up the Brandon Nimmo stuff earlier, 5.5 fantasy points more than over on rtsports.com. And I also like Brandon Nimmo plus 400 at home run tonight. Josiah Gray against lefty bats. 250 ISO allowed, 450 WOBA allowed over his last 30 days. And you look at Omar Narvaez, again, like he's kind of just been for a long stretch of time in Milwaukee has been a good hitter. So I'm okay with just punting the position completely today. Especially, is Alvarez going to pinch hit today with I'm assuming he's sitting, one, because he has played a bunch of days in a row, but 2, he got hit with the pitch the other day, right? And then 1 for 4 yesterday. Maybe we needed a day off after, goes 0 for 1 for 4. We're 1 for our last 9 after getting hit by a pitch. Maybe we see a full night of Omar Narvaez behind the dish and 3 or 4 at bats. So Naylor and Narvaez are 2 more plays I would just completely punt with, because I think this is a position that we don't need to spend up on. Like, you can play Kybert or Wilson Contreras or Yan Gomes if you wanted to, but we're about to go to first base and we can just pivot there now. This is a clear spend up position tonight, right? Like, we have Goldschmidt against a lefty. He has long been good against lefties if you want to attack Justin Steele. We have Cody Bellinger, who's first base eligible, who is probably the hottest trade commodity in baseball. He looks like the MVP player that he was a few years back. And you have Pete Alonso, who just woke up from his slumber, as Bears usually do in the winter. And he doubled down the other night. So, spend down a catcher so we can spend up at first, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And with Bellinger, he's had 5 straight games with RBI production. That's insane right now. And again, if you don't want to, we can almost use both of our spend ups on the first base, with Bellinger also qualifying in the outfield as well. So we can use both Paulie G and Bellinger too.
Paulie G, what is he? Is he in Jersey Shore?
No, that's Paulie D, James. Close.
Yes, but I saw you doing a little fist bump. Your chest is out. We're good. There were some Jersey Shore vibes there. I know you love Jersey Shore too.
I gotta gel up my spiky hair.
True. That's true.
So I think that you're right there. Punting the catcher position gives us that flexibility. You love Goldschmidt versus the lefty there, and I don't want to fade that. $6K, very high price point. But then we can also start our outfield with him too.
Yeah, with Bellinger, right? Yeah, I love that. And you talk about the 4 or 5 straight games with RBIs. I mean, just look at July in general. He has driven in more runs than I think days in the month, it feels like at this point. And again, his trade stock is as high as it's ever been. He's on a 1-year deal. Perfect rental for anybody out there looking for. So as Bellinger's stock rises, so does his fantasy price, but I have no problem paying 56. How about under Alonso? Fancy, anybody really stick out to you? Because I didn't love this next tier. I have a couple guys that piqued my interest, but what do you say under Alonso?
The only player that I really saw under Alonso is Josh Bell, who I thought, the guy again, you don't like BVP, but when looking for a value, his 400 hitter versus Cease, and again at 3,100 not a bad option as well tonight, especially if I'm going to be looking at Bobby as one of my pitchers, think he's going to need some run support. So that's about as cheap as I would go with the position.
Yeah, Josh Bell's been good lately too, for what it's worth. I mean, he does have a lot of plate appearances against Cease. They play in the same division. I mean, not that Bell has always been in the same division, but they play in the same division now. Bell with 7-game hitting streak. We've seen back-to-back games earlier this month with home runs. So starting to come around a little bit for Josh Bell. I'm going to throw something at you, and I'll just duck because you're a Mets fan. How about Vogelbach?
I knew it. I knew you were going to say that. I was doing a little bit of reading.
About some Dan Vogelbach tonight. I mean,
why not?
Look, Josiah Gray has struggled against lefties lately, and the one thing that let me rephrase this. There's 3 things that we can rely on Dan Vogelbach. 1, there's at bats where he might not take his bat off his shoulder, and he might strike out. 2, there's at bats where he might not take his bat off his shoulder and he might walk. And 3, he might look terrible doing everything he does at the dish, but he might run into a home run. He's homered twice in his last 4 games. I know it's a limited sample size, 26 at bats, but 346 over 1,000 OPS over his last 10. Again, it's an interesting dilemma because on DraftKings specifically, that means you're not playing Pete Alonso if you're playing Mets, right? And that's opportunity cost at its finest. Why would I play Dan Vogelbach when I could play Alonso? Just throwing it out there that he's been better, and there's weather and wind blowing out in Citi Field. So just throwing that out there.
No, it's not bad. And especially because as we get to second base, as you'll hear, I have a lot of trouble spending down at that position too. So if you want to go cheaper on Vogie, then we could still keep Bellinger at his price point in the outfield too. So it's going to cost us Paul Goldschmidt, but it may a little bit more GPP theory. A lot of people are going to be on Goldschmidt tonight. Maybe this is the way to go. That way we still get that top tier at first base in Bellinger without worrying to have to go back to that 2.5 to 3K range for more players on this giant slate that we've got.
Guys, we see your questions. We'll get to them. Faisal, what's going on, man? King of Smack, what's going on? We'll get to the Lindor question when we hit shortstop. Right now, we're going to pivot to second base, Fancy. Talk to me about your favorite second baseman.
I mean, when looking at second base, it's hard for me to go beyond there are 2 players I like, and they're unfortunately 3 of the players I like are in the top 4. They're numbers 2, 3, and 4. Horner and Gorman are 2 that I like very, very much here, especially Horner. I wish I could get in there along with Bellinger, an expensive Cubs stack. Like him very much. And here's the thing with Nolan Gorman, and I was writing a few notes earlier about him. When it comes to Nolan Gorman, I mean, look, I want to attack the lefty with him, and I know it's a little bit of crime, but still, with what we've seen from Nolan Gorman, he was the first player when I was looking at anybody that could be not the top price guy. He was someone that I came up with there. I mean, look, man, between those 2, that's kind of where I'm heading. It's very hard for me to justify spending down at this spot.
Yeah, Nolan Gorman's been very good against lefties this year. Justin Steele has actually struggled with lefties this year. So might be a match made in heaven. That brings us to our question with King of Smack. Do we think St. Louis and Cleveland get it done? Small slate. He likes some Mets as well. I think the Cubs win this game. From a DFS perspective, I like both sides offensively. Cleveland, I think that Cleveland game is going under 8.5 runs, which one of my bets on Better Sports Betting just before this. So I don't love a lot of the offense. Fancy, what are your thoughts?
No, I actually liked Servo's bet too on the team total for the Cubs, the over 4.5. I thought very smart as well. And this slate's indicating it here. And again, if I'm liking all of these top price Cubs bats and I'm willing to sacrifice the higher price Cardinals bats, I'm thinking it's more going to be the Cubs night there. But both of these teams from other areas that we've addressed, the weather, the heat, this could go over that 9 total.
Any spend downs at second? The only one I got for you is Jeff McNeil. I like McNeil.
Yeah, I put him there too in the dock.
He's hitting third. I know he's been struggling, but I mean, this is a guy who won a batting title last year. So he's better than what he is showing. Let's go to third. I think this position is very interesting today because I think there's options you can spend up on. And then I think there's a couple options you can spend down to. what are you mostly doing today, Fancy?
So there are two players that come to mind here, which I was on. Number one, Arenado up top. He's the first to come to mind. And then the second player to come to mind as we go all the way back down to 2-5, Mastroboni as well
Yep.
is someone that I'm looking at. Again, the big theme for me, I'm liking the Cubs very much. This guy has hit the ball and multiple hits in recent games, but he's hit the ball in 5 of his last 6. This guy has been scoring double figures 4 times in his last 6 games. To see him there at 2-5 against Michaelis, how can you not love him at this point?
Yeah, and 9-hitters always provide you that wraparound stack as well. He's second base only on FanDuel, so if you're playing on FanDuel, you don't have the luxury of using him at third. But back-to-back days with stolen bases as well. Hit a home run the other day. Not that that's something that can be relied upon, but again, 100-degree weather, ball's gonna fly. So anything is possible. That's what Kevin Garnett told us. I do like Arenado. I definitely don't mind getting to Jose Ramirez coming off, his second biggest game of the year. He triple donged earlier in the year, double donged yesterday. So we know Jose Ramirez has as high of a ceiling as anybody. So I could definitely get there. I'll give a little shout to Brett Beatty. I know he's really struggling, but I might as well at this point just really dig in and mention all 9 Mets because I've already mentioned 6 of them, and we're only on to shortstop now. So speaking of Mets, Francisco Lindor here, 5,200. Fancy, we have 5 second basemen. Just rank them. Just rank them, and you can include Nico Horner here if you want to rank him number 1. That means you could play Christopher Morel at second if you really wanted to, or someone else. Rank the 5 eligible bachelors here at shortstop.
I mean, at this point, you're looking to see who's out there. I mean, Jordan, you said second at first, by the way, so I almost went there.
Sorry.
I'll say this. I mean, obviously, Horner's going to be my number 1 seed. I know it's a little bit of a cheat code. He's there. And then after that, I was thinking that's where it kind of got tough for me. So Lindor's number 2. And then I want to go to CJ Abrams.
Yes,
Originally, Paul DeYoung was my value play of the day, but he's out of the lineup. And it freaked me the hell out. And I loved him because at this point, him against lefties was 275. He's pretty much hitting against them. But he's out now. He's not starting tonight. CJ Abrams is my sweet spot at 3-9 after that.
Yeah. Runner-up or player of the week in the NL last week. So I love CJ Abrams. He's going to, until he's 4,500 or more, I'm going to play him every night. And Faisal, I love Lindor, just like Fancy rated him second. I would also probably... I'm more of a 1A, 1B with him and Nico Horner. So I think they're on the same tier tonight as top shortstops. So I love Lindor. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's wrap it up here in the outfield, Fancy, and then we'll rattle off a lineup for the folks at home. Talk to me about the outfield because there's only 6 players over 4K. So who over 4K specifically jumps out to you?
I mean, Bellinger's been hot lately. I never knew I was a big Cubs fan, and I feel like Henry Rowan-Gardner at this point. But
good shout.
Cody Bellinger, I mean, look at what he's done over his last few games. At least 14 DraftKings points in 4 of his last 5. And on a short slate, I know that we've been going value a lot, especially at the beginning with catcher and even first base. But maybe McNeil, by the way, who we both like, who also is very, very cheap, can complement in the outfield someone like a spend-up like Bellinger, too. So if we could I want to get Bellinger in this lineup. I'm feeling like you can with Bellinger and then a McNeil there. You were talking about Nimmo before. The one other player that I have a question about, what do you think of Kwan at 4,600?
Yeah, I mean, he's been really good. The only thing with Steven Kwan is I'm not sure what the upside is because I know he's homered twice since the break. That is not reliable. He is not a power hitter. He does have some stolen base equity there, 15 stolen bases on the year.
He hasn't been stealing them though.
He has not. Yeah, just 1 over his last 10. I'm indifferent. Someone I'd probably typically stay away, and maybe you can get to it because it's only a 3-game slate, right? Typically, a guy who has 4 home runs and isn't running when that's your calling card in DFS, I'm probably staying away personally. Yeah. He is much more appropriately priced on FanDuel. He's only like $3,000, so I'd much rather play him at 3K than 4,600. I'll tell you that.
Is there maybe an outfielder that you like that's more on the cheap side in that heated Cubs Cardinals matchup that we're going to have that we could get away with, maybe try to take advantage of the weather?
Ian Happ. Ian
Okay.
Happ's my guy. Starting to heat up, 5-game hitting streak, homered yesterday, stolen base the day before, and that's kind of what Ian Happ provides. He can hit well from the right side. He hits well from the left side. A lot of runs scored over this last 10-game stretch, 12. He's always on base. He's always putting the ball in play, hits in the middle of their lineup, and he's 3,400. I love Ian Happ. That would probably be my guy. Do you have a different answer there?
No, I'm totally fine. I wasn't even going to go that low when it came to the position tonight.
Oh, okay. Because I'll go even lower. Just in the same game. And again, if you're not playing Justin Steele, okay, which I'm okay with. The Cardinals are implied. It's weird. Justin Steele has the best odds today to win, plus 140 outright. That's DraftKings Sportsbook. But the Cardinals have almost 5 implied runs today. It's
Right.
like, what gives, right? It's like, do the Cardinals score all these runs, or is Justin Steele going to win, or can both coexist because the Cubs are scoring all these runs? But if the Cubs are scoring all these runs, why are they only implied 4.5 runs, right?
Well, I'll say this, and I forgot that I put this note in our doc as well. Dylan Carlson, 274 versus.
That was where I was going. That's exactly where I was going as well.
Yep.
It's been a multi-year thing. When you look at Dylan Carlson last year against lefties, 373 WOBA, 172 ISO. This year is no different. I mean, again, 365 WOBA. And they were actually batting him first against lefties earlier in the year. I'm kind of ticked that they're batting him 8th. Maybe that depresses the ownership a little bit and keeps him a little lower owned at 2,300. But that's all I got. I mean, I'm just saying DJ Stewart's name, so I officially now have mentioned everyone in the Mets lineup. Just mentioned. I'm just saying. I just mentioned. In case you didn't know who my top stack of the night was. Fence, you want to get into some lineup building? I plugged Cody Bellinger first.
Yeah, good.
Because we're gonna play him. So I plugged him in the outfield. We'll decide on what we do, but it seemed like that's the way we were gonna go. I think both you and I were in on Tanner Bybee. I think that was the first spot that we were definitively stamp of approval. What do you want to do next? Because Steele, we both like, but there's definitely some Cardinal exposure that I think you and I liked. Kodai Senga is really good at home. Does he have the strikeout upside against Washington? Dylan Cease is up against the other pitcher we're using, so only one of them could technically get a win. And I think neither of us want to play Mikolas. I know you had interest in Gray, but I'm vetoing that. So
That's fine. That's totally fine.
What do you want to do for our SP2?
You want to go with Senga since the walks have been down a little bit?
Yeah, we can go Senga. I think that's a pretty safe play. Catcher.
Naylor or Narvaez?
Okay, let's go Naylor. I think Naylor's a pretty good play here coming off the double dong. He's going to play every day with Cleveland clearly selling at the deadline, trading away Ahmed Rosario. What are you feeling about first, Fancy? Do we want to spend up to Goldie? Do we want to get Alonso? I think if we went up to Goldie, it would be tough to get someone like you know what? At third, do you want to just jump ahead and plug Mastrobuoni at third? Because I think both you and I like Mastrobuoni a whole bunch at third, because that gives us a bunch of money. What do you want to do at first? Because that actually opened up a lot here.
I mean, do you want to go with Bellinger? Or you want to save him for the outfield spot? Oh, no, we have in the outfield.
Yeah, let's put him in the outfield. I think outfield is not too deep.
You want to go Josh Bell, who I brought up before?
Yeah, sure. I'm okay with going Josh Bell, a little 2-man Guardian stack. That will pretty much take us to the promised land, because I think Nico Horner is probably where we want to go here.
Yep.
With Horner off the board, it's Lindor or Abrams.
You want to save and go Abrams, or
I don't think we need to save. That's the problem. We have so much money. We're gonna have if we went Lindor here, right?
And we had an over 5K average, so
even if we went Nimmo here, we still have so much money, and then we could play Hap and then mess around with the rest of our lineup if we wanted to. We have $1,300 to spare. We could go up and get Yan Gomes if you wanted to play a full Cub stack. We could first base, nothing. Third base, nothing. We're kind of just settling in with
If we
extra
leave,
money.
dude, if we leave money on the table, we leave money on the table. It's a 3-game slate.
I agree, and I think that's a good. We can quickly touch on that and a good place to end. On a 3-game slate, there are plenty of approaches you could take, including money left on the table. As you guys can see, 1,300 left on the table. On a 12-game slate, I'm not advising 1,300 on left over. There are not a lot of options tonight. You could, in theory, even use a player against one of your pitchers if you felt strongly, because it's just one player. If they solo home run and your pitcher still goes 7 strong, you're in a driver's seat. It's a way to be different. And on 3-game slates, we can get different, including leaving $1,300 on the slate. Fancy, before we get out of here, any final thoughts for the people there?
I'm loving this lineup that we actually have. I definitely want to play it tonight. Even though it's only 3 games, it's tough. It's not easy, but this is a good combination. And again, I'm not sweating the leaving the money on the table tonight, man. We only have so many directions we could go.
Me neither. And so that'll do it. For the people listening at home, Tanner Bybee, Kodai Senga, Bo Naylor, Josh Bell, Nico Horner, Miles Mastroboni, Francisco Lindor, Cody Bellinger, Brandon Nimmo, Ian Happ is the lineup, 1,300 left over. Follow Justin Fensterman or Justin Fensterman over on the Twitter machine at Fancy Sports. Follow me at _real_grande, otherwise known as the king of the underscore. Please smash the like button, smash the subscribe button if you don't already. We really appreciate all your guys' support here at Fantasy Alarm and at the Better Sports Network. For Grande, for Fensty, it's been a doozy. Catch you guys tomorrow.